Bob Fosse is known for his distinctive choreography and directorial style. The most recurring theme in his work is the deconstruction of showbiz, so then it is no surprise that Bob Fosse uses colour and lighting in a similar way that theatre would to denote character and plot progression in his work. In this video essay, I will be exploring how Bob Fosse creates character.
To be on the wire is life. The rest is waiting.
That's very theatrical, Joe.
Yeah, I know.
Did you make it up?
I wish I had. You like it?
Well, it's all right.
It's showtime, folks.
All That Jazz came out in 1979, a semi-autobiographical film for Fosse. It focuses on choreographer and director Joe Gideon, played by a weary-looking Roy Scheider. Gideon is rapidly deteriorating under the pressures of his projects, his knotty personal life, and sleazy vices. The film is a feat of editing. Gideon's inner world is a medley of low-key lit memories and fantasies, whilst his real life sits sallow and suffocating. As Gideon speeds towards collapse, the moments of fantasy and reality blur as it becomes clear that Gideon's real life is impossibly tangled up in the razzle-dazzle of showtime. In his review of All That Jazz, J.C. Masek says, "It feels so fitting that his nightmares all involve being trapped in a dark Broadway musical of his own making, that the astute viewer may regard much of the film as horror as opposed to fantasy or drama. That nightmarish quality is reflected in the shadowy world of Joe's memories, with intense high-contrast colours and overwhelming stage lights. Young Joe has nowhere to hide, whereas the audience lurk in the safety of shadows." As the film progresses, we see a reclaiming of both light and dark spaces. What was originally nightmarish becomes seductive and beautiful, and how Joe makes sense of the world around him. Key scenes that illustrate how Fosse plays with lights and editing come towards the end of the film. Throughout the final act of All That Jazz, there are rapid switches between the reality of Joe's situation, a recent heart attack has landed him in hospital, and his show-tune fantasies, wherein the women in his life sing and dance to navigate their feelings towards him. There are two Joes here. The real Joe laying in his hospital bed in the diffused light source of the real world, and director Joe, lit by the stage lights above and in full control. It's during these hospital hallucinations that we seal the film at its most theatrical, but also at its most bleakly realistic. The contrast between the clean, bright lights and colours of the musical numbers and the mostly diffused humdrum of the hospital are a compelling dichotomy and go further in portraying the different facets of Joe's character. As the surgeon remarks,
"You are foolishly and childishly flirting with disaster."
But as he rapidly fades, Joe constantly seeks out the light, even in the darkest places. Even in his loneliest moments, when the wide-angle shots show him dwarfed by the pale lights of the hospital, he is still looking for illumination. The mastery of combining Joe's showbiz sensibilities with the grim reality of a situation means that by the time we get to Bye Bye Life, the penultimate scene in the movie, the extravagant, dizzying set pieces do not seem out of place. Its high contrast imagery reflects and embraces the dark and the light spaces. It is at once an acceptance of mortality and a defiant refusal to fade away. Throughout the film, Joe flirts with death in the form of the mysterious Angelique, played by Jessica Lange, an angel of death who appears to Joe as a beautiful woman. She is presented as a classical Hollywood beauty reminiscent of Grace Kelly or Veronica Lake. The same diffused, full lighting associated with these classic leading ladies is granted to Angelique, though at times she is obscured, often by blinding white light. Towards the end of the film, though, she is backlit, which gives her entire silhouette a halo, adding to her otherworldly presence. She represents showbiz, beauty, sex, love, life and death. Both Joe and Angelique gradually come into full view, and the audience sees that the light at the end of the tunnel for Joe is a beautiful woman, a stage and a spotlight. And so, for the final time, it's showtime, folks.